I definitely was kind of keeping my eyes open, and then the sunscreen kind of thing just landed in front of me, and I haven't really looked back.
Richard Liew here, editor at nzentrepreneur.co.nz. Today I'm delighted to be talking to Natalie Jones. Natalie's the founder of the Seasick Sunscreen Co. She's joining us today from Wellington. Natalie, thank you so much for being here and looking forward to this talk.
Kia ora, ai ko Natalie Jones toko ingoa, ko nai wala ki Ngāti Apa te iwi, no ingarangi airana, ko te rana hoki o Kutupuna, tēnā koutou.
Cool. Kia ora, Nat. Now, can you tell us about the work you've been doing? You've been very, very busy, especially 2022. You just mentioned it's quite of a breakthrough year, I guess. You've come out of the Corkery program as well. That's something I'd like to hear a bit more about in this little chat. But firstly, can you just introduce your product? What have you been beavering away at there?
Yeah, so this is the product here, Seasick Sunscreen. I started it back in 2019 when I couldn't find a sunscreen that I was happy using on my body, and one that was safe for the environment, you know, not having any of the nasty chemicals in it, and also being plastic free, and one here that was made in Aotearoa. So yeah, I spent the last 4 years tinkering away, and 2022, like you mentioned, was a huge year for me. I went through the Corkery Māori Business Accelerator program and upscaled my kind of the business, which was just a side hustle at that time alongside my full-time job and study, to a fully fledged business. So I've just gone full-time for the first time, and I'm really excited about what the coming year has to bring.
Brilliant. And what was it specifically that you were looking for when you came up with this idea to launch your own product? What was missing in the, I guess, incumbent, or what was available on the market already in terms of those sunscreens, sunblocks?
So as someone that uses a lot of like sustainable products, I'd already kind of made the shift in terms of using like locally produced and plastic-free toothpaste and other skincare products. But it was on a dive trip to Hawaii that obviously I needed to stock up on sunscreen, and I realized I couldn't find a sunscreen that didn't have all these UV chemical filters in it, which are quite toxic to marine life, especially when they're washing off bodies where there's lots of swimmers and snorkelers and beautiful corals and fish, so they wash off in quite high concentrations. I also didn't want something that came in a single-use plastic bottle, because pretty much all plastic sunscreen bottles are difficult, if not impossible, to recycle. And very few sunscreens on the shelves that I was finding here were made here in Aotearoa, and I love supporting local. So it's kind of a combination of things. And when I just couldn't find a product that I was happy using, I decided to order a bunch of naturally derived ingredients, things like coconut oil, shea butter, and non-nano zinc is the product I use that protects you against the sun. And I started mixing it up in my kitchen on the stove, and eventually launched our sunscreen.
Right. Okay. So for people watching this, you heard it right here. It was literally you buying some stuff, mixing it up in your kitchen, sticking it on your skin, and I'm sure other people's, and seeing if it works, seeing if people liked it. Can you tell us a bit more about that specific process? I mean, what are the steps that you had to go through from kitchen to having it bought and stocked in, say, retail?
Yeah, so I mean, it's exactly what you said. I just started testing it on myself and my friends and family, seeing if they liked it. And eczema runs in my family. We actually, lots of my cousins and nieces and nephews, we suffer from quite bad eczema. So it was kind of the perfect group of people to test it on, because we all have highly sensitive skin. And that was actually one of the main pieces of feedback I got really early on, was not only, is this safe for the environment, but it was actually working for people with these really painful skin irritations. So obviously the first couple of formulations that I came up with weren't quite right. They were a bit too thick, maybe like a bit too chunky, didn't rub in properly. So I ended up searching far and wide on the internet for the best possible ingredients. And I started with a really simple formula, just a handful of ingredients, thinking that I could kind of add things in as I go. but I just never added anything else in. I actually landed on the current formulation pretty early on, and I've made just a few slight changes to it since. Of course, once I came up with the formula, it then got a bit more sciencey, and I sent my samples away to a SPF testing facility in Australia. So it's independently SPF tested, and they test it in the lab on a group of people and send you back a report. So our sunscreen products meet the New Zealand and Australia sunscreen standard.
And have you done anything like this before? Like, have you run a business, started a product?
Not unless you count like the classic Kiwi kid, like selling things on the side of the road, which I definitely did. My first launch into business was probably like doing pretend quotes for my dad's business. He used to like give me fake paperwork to do, and I would charge him like $1 per piece of paperwork. And then I think I put my prices up to $2, and he's like, yeah, no, I'm not doing that anymore. And yeah, I guess I just dabbled. I've always been really artistic. I love creating things. And having seen my parents run their own business and some friends who specifically work in sustainable businesses, I just looked at them and thought, wow, that is something I really want to do. So I definitely was kind of keeping my eyes open. And then the sunscreen kind of thing just landed in front of me, and I haven't really looked back, just thought I'd give it a go. And now it's 4 years later.
You mentioned the sustainability side of things, but there's also a social enterprise aspect as well to what you're doing. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so before getting into sunscreen, my background is in conservation. I used to manage a non-profit community organisation here in Wellington, and I'm just super passionate about protecting the environment. So I knew that any kind of business that I wanted to be involved in, that would be at the core of it. So yeah, the health of the oceans is at the heart of everything I do and everything that the business does. So from the very beginning, we committed to donating 2% of our revenue to local ocean conservation, which I know might not sound like a lot, but when you're a small business, it does add up. And we've already been able to donate over $1,000 to a local conservation project here in Wellington, which, you know, I wouldn't have had a spare $1,000 as just a person, but through my business, we've been able to support their reforestation work, which they're actually, Liew is the name of the organisation, and they're restoring Wellington's underwater kelp forest, which is so cool. And I'm stoked to be supporting that. And yeah, as the business grows, I have a vision of being able to support Indigenous-led conservation projects wherever Seasick Sunscreen is either operating or being sold in the world. So I've got my eye on the Pacific next, and I would love to support like coral restoration and ocean conservation over there.
Can I ask you about the entrepreneurial journey? You know, you mentioned you haven't sort of done anything like this before. Has it been what you've expected?
Yeah, I'd say it definitely hasn't been what I expected, because I don't know what I was expecting. I really don't think I thought it through before getting involved. I just got really excited about this idea, and it just kind of snowballed and happened. So I've definitely been learning about it as I go. What I'm really grateful for is that I'm part of an amazing network of other entrepreneurs, and we're all going through the same journey, but just at different stages. So everything I've learned has basically been from other people. So yeah, at the start of the business, I had a lot of fun. That's when I got to put all my creativity in and see this idea turn into this like tangible thing, like a real product within just a few, weeks or months. I had a website and social media accounts and a physical product that I could share with people. After that, everything got a lot harder. It's kind of like, the challenges just came up one after another, and they got harder and harder, especially when I tried to upscale the business. So I entered the period which I think people kind of know it as the dark night of the soul, which is when everything goes wrong and you just feel like giving up. And that's the point when a lot of businesses do fail. I think there's some crazy statistic about, like 60% of startups fail in their first 3 years or something like that. That was pretty much us in October last year, so just a few months ago. And without the support of my friends and mentors, I'm not sure that I would have been able to get out of that space. But I had a great group of people around me that gave me good ideas, and I guess kept pushing through and have kind of come out of the other side of that, and I feel a lot stronger. And in a better position to grow the business and see where it goes from here.
Awesome. And on that note, so what's the next 12 to 18 months look like for you?
Yeah, so having just gone full time on the business, this is the first time that I haven't had any other form of income. So I've set myself a target of actually being able to start paying myself a wage by the end of the year, which means that I need to at least triple my sales. I obviously don't have a background in sales, so that's something that, I do find difficult, but what I'm really passionate about is telling and sharing the story of the business and like the feeling, the experience behind why I'm selling sunscreen. So I'm just trying to do that as much as possible, getting the product out there, onboarding a bunch of new retailers. We've just actually kind of made that leap from these small boutique one-off stores to some quite large retail outlets that have, shops in Auckland, Wellington, Christchurch, like right across the country. So that's really exciting. And possibly launching a couple of new products, and just getting the business name out there.
Thank you so much for talking to us today, Natalie, and all the best for the rest of the year. We'll be following the Seasick Sunscreen Co story with interest. Any last messages you'd like to share with maybe potential founders in waiting might be watching this with an idea, but they haven't yet taken those first steps?
I did actually receive a really incredible piece of advice from my business mentor right at the end of the Kōkiri program. I think she kind of saved up this for the last session we had, and she asked me what would get me out of bed to do this job, running Seasick Sunscreen, in 10 years' time. And I think in the early days of a startup, it's so hard to dream about the future. You're always just like fighting fires and dealing with like what's right in front of you. But she asked me that question and I answered it straight away. My answer was about, working, I guess, on the more charitable conservation branch of the social enterprise, so supporting local conservation initiatives. And then I guess I looked at working backwards. So like, what would we need to do to make that happen? And I just thought that was a really inspiring conversation. It was the first time as an entrepreneur I'd ever let myself dream big and think about what the best possible outcome in the future could be. And I came away from that conversation really inspired. And that was over 6 months ago, but still I think about it all the time. And it definitely helps get me through some of those tough times.